Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. This next interview is with Dr. Morgan Francis, who is a clinical psychologist, and she's going to tell you all about what she does, who she helps, and she honestly is someone with a very extensive background, so I'm really excited for you guys to learn from her. This episode, we do talk a little bit about eating disorders, so if you are someone who struggled with an eating disorder in the past, I don't believe we talk about too much stuff that might trigger. However, you never know. So if at any point you find this to be triggering, please stop listening. If you feel like you have learned a lot from this episode, I'll kind of explain on the other end what I think you should do. But definitely share this with someone, put it on your story. Let us know that this resonated with you, because I think you're going to learn a lot and get a lot of powerful, useful, helpful tools in your toolbox to help you to kind of recover or heal your relationship with your body. So without further ado, here's the interview. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure. I always ask this question. If you could just introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
So my name is Dr. Morgan Francis, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and doctorate of clinical psychology. I am the owner of Scottsdale Premier Counseling, which is a private practice in Scottsdale, Arizona. I specialize in the treatment of body image, sexual health, relationships, and obviously eating disorders and disordered eating. Mm-hmm. I work with individuals, couples, and families, and I'm also a public speaker. So I serve at speaking engagements around the Valley, and I tend to be a guest on Fox News here in Phoenix. And I'm a mother to 3 children, 7, 5, and 3, and I'm married to a hottie.
I love it. And I don't know if this is too much, but you're a hottie too, so it makes sense. I think keep track of what we just but that's really great. It seems like you have a lot under your belt. And I really look up to you. Like I found through who I think you did a live event with Angie Lee. Is that correct?
Yes, we were together. Yes.
I love Angie. And so I was like strolling across your page, and I was like, well, this is very refreshing, because I'm a dietitian. So I see people all the time that are struggling with body image. And what people don't recognize is, like, as a dietitian, I can help you with your nutrition, and I can help you develop a healthier relationship with your food. But when it comes to the relationship with your body, there's like a line that I can't cross, and I'm not really credentialed to even talk about or to teach. So it was really awesome to kind of find someone who has this extensive background and knowledge. And your approach into helping people, I found, just seems like what people need to hear. And like they'll get it. And so I'm really excited to have you on. And I know at the end we're gonna talk about like your course and where people can find you. But I hope people after this episode start following you, just so they can get some just a reliable resource and just someone who's going to teach them, not really just tell them, and really help them to kind of get to the root cause of what's causing all these issues.
Well, I really appreciate that. That's really awesome to hear. And thank you so much, because, for myself, I don't counsel people on what to eat or what not to eat. So yes, I use people like you, like registered dietitians that are, able to really be an effective person to help a person, heal their relationship with their body and their food. So I love your work as well.
Thank you. I'm curious, what got you into wanting to go into psychology? Like what started that for you?
Well, it was really early on. So when I was 16, my brother was killed in a car accident. And so when a family loses like a child, or for me, obviously a sibling, that really changes your life completely. And so right away, my parents got me into grief counseling, which was such a gift because it helps me be able to express my emotions, not just through talk therapy, but also through journaling and art therapy and music and photography. And I really feel like that was a saving grace for me. But as I, moved through my grieving process and I went into, high school and then college, obviously, the pain of the loss was still there. And so like all of us, we are very good avoiders of pain. And one of the ways that I avoided my pain was to develop an eating disorder. And so my eating disorder was what I could focus on because it gave me a sense of control. And obviously, having diet culture on top of that really just compounded my eating disorder. And so my parents basically said, look, you got to go back into treatment because we can't, you can't live like this. And so that, again, was another saving grace. And I went back into therapy, worked with an amazing therapist that really helped me heal my relationship with my eating disorder. And I graduated, I started to move on with my life. But there was this kind of like lingering layer where even though I wasn't, meeting the criteria for an eating disorder, I was still experiencing disordered eating. And my relationship with my body really was negative, and I was really suffering from a poor body image. And so I really dug into the research, and I really enjoyed being able to find information. And it wasn't until I came across, and I don't even know who it was, and I wish I could remember what woman it was, but basically she said, you can love your body at the size it is. You can accept your body. And I was like, what? No, I can't accept my body. Like, I can't accept my body until I lose my 10 pounds or until I look like her or until I have better looking arms or a flat stomach or whatever it may be. And it was just such a radical, rebellious concept. And so I really kind of it just stayed with me. And then that's when I knew, like, wow, what if I didn't have to change my body? What if all the time and energy and mental attention and financial resources I've been putting into dieting and making myself smaller, I started to improve the quality of my life by just focusing on, creativity, entrepreneurship, making friendships, traveling, getting out there and really, being a participating member of society. And so I did. And so that's when I really shifted the attention off my body shape and size and moved into, really creating more meaning and value in my life. That really was, I believe, my purpose here, which is to help and serve others. And that's why I think that's why I'm called to do the work that I do at my private practice. And then, through my Instagram or online, venues I'm in or, speaking engagements. And it's really just to spread that message that, we don't have to be at war with our bodies in order to, be okay. Our bodies don't have to be a source of stress. Mm-hmm. And that's where my mission and what I stand for, really how it evolved and came to be.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I love the vulnerability and being honest and knowing, that, because I think a lot of people don't, and I've said this before, I've had guest experts before, and they see, a doctor next to your name, right? I see I have a master's degree, they see us succeeding in all these things, and they think oh no, I can never be that. I can never do that. But we got here because we started from that place. Mm-hmm. And we looked at it, and it was hard and it wasn't not easy, but we used the resources around us to eventually pull us out of it and now give back as a result. So thank you for what you do, because you could have selfishly just fixed your relationship with food and just not spoken about it. And instead now you're helping so many people do that. So thank you.
No, I love it. And I find it to be such an honor that I get to do what I do. I love my clients. I'm so blessed because it's just, I don't even think of it as work. I think of it I'm going to the office, but it does not feel like work to me at all.
I love that. So you said something really interesting that I kind of want to circle back to, which was one way that you kind of healed your relationship with your body, or recognized like, okay, my body can be this way. It doesn't need to be a certain way before I can kind of start my life. I guess at what point or what switch, because you said when your therapist first told you can love your body now, you were like, no, so I guess what did it take for you to finally really understand that concept? Like maybe what was the first thing that you did? Because I have a feeling it didn't happen overnight.
No, it did not. And thank you for bringing that point up, because yes, this was a journey. This was years. This wasn't even like a month. So really, I remember very, very clearly that when I was in my eating disorder, I felt like I was in prison. Mm-hmm. So I felt that my freedom was really taken away from me, because everything was in reaction to two things. What am I going to eat and how am I going to get rid of it? That's all I thought about. I could be in class. I could be out with friends. I could be with my boyfriend. It didn't matter. That's what all I was thinking about. So I really felt like I had no freedom, because I was obsessed about what am I going to eat and how am I going to get rid of it? So when I started to, work through my therapy, it was really about coming home. And when I say that, I mean like literally coming back to myself. Mm. So the homecoming meant that I had to restore the trust that was broken with my body. Because if my body was saying to me, I'm hungry, I would ignore it, or I would overeat, or I would say, no, let's just have some water. You're not. Like, you can drink the water and that will fulfill you, when really it wanted food. Mm-hmm. So I was breaking trust with my body. So in order for me to learn, listen, and to respect my body, I had to listen and respond. So I had to honor my hunger, and I had to really be mindful of my satiation. So if that meant that I was full, like to stop eating and put the fork down, so that I could become aware of my internal experience, rather than looking at my plate and being like, oh, well, how about I just have a little bit more? Oh, or like that dessert looks so good, I'm still going to eat that even though I'm full. Because I mean, my eating went both ways. It was restriction and binging. So there was times in my life where I would restrict and not eat at all. And there was times in my life where I was binging and would eat way too much. So restoring the trust with your body is one of the most critical steps to healing your relationship with your body.
Yeah, definitely. And that was so important. I'm glad that you said that we tend to ignore our hunger cues. We're not dependent on them. We really have to kind of bring that back. And that is a process, and it does take time. Mm-hmm. Within that process though, and I don't know where you started, and everyone's journey is very different, but within that process, I'm wondering, like, did you maybe gain some weight or lose some weight? And were you someone who was obsessed with the scale? Like, it wasn't just like what you saw in the mirror. I'm very curious about your experience with that, because we can have our mind saying one thing, we get on the scale and it's like all that went away. Like, we could be super positive, feeling really good, get on the scale's up, and now it's like goes completely away. Or the reverse. Mm-hmm. Like we could have just totally binged, and then we get on the scale and somehow it's down, and you're like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Like, mm-hmm. So I think that I would love to hear kind of your perspective of the scale, and if that played a role in your healing process at all.
Absolutely. So the scale was very, very an important role for me growing up, because I often saw my mom step on the scale. And it didn't mean that it was always a negative thing that she was stepping on the scale. I just, as a child, saw her do it on a very consistent basis. And so that, children learn through social modeling, monkey see, monkey do. So by the time I was a teenager, I was stepping on the scale and was very aware of the number. Right? The number that I was at versus the number that I was supposed to be at. And again, I don't know who made this number up. It's just a number that was created that I decided it had to be that number.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of value, right? Like my worth is dependent upon that number. And so when I moved into college, oh yes, I definitely had a scale. I mean, of course, like most women, we have scales. And so my work through the scale was to really break up with it, because as you pointed out, like that number holds so much like power. And I was so sick of a number holding so much power. Like, I don't look at myself and think to myself, oh my God, I'm having a horrible day because I'm 5'4", right? But it's still a number. Like, oh, I'm having the worst day ever because it's 75 degrees outside. no, it's just a number. But we do that with the number of the scale. Mm-hmm. And as you highlighted, like our body shape can really change. And so, yes, as I was healing my relationship with my body and working towards more of an intuitive approach towards eating, yeah, I mean, my body weight completely fluctuated. There were seasons or months where I was above my normal weight. And then there were seasons that I was below my normal weight. And there were seasons where my body didn't change at all. Mm-hmm. So it went everywhere. And it was hard. There were times where I felt, my clothes didn't fit. I didn't like the way that I looked. But I knew that in order for me to heal my body, I had to move away from, paying attention to aesthetically, like how it looks, to focusing on what does my body do for me and learning to appreciate what my body does versus focusing on what it looks like.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful. And I had a dietitian on here who specializes in intuitive eating. She's a good friend of mine, Claire Tuning. And we talked about body image, and she too will refer out because although it's still not 100% in her scope. She says one thing that she's learned from just talking with people like you who kind of help with that is to, when you're looking at your body and you're beating yourself up in your head, is to remind yourself of what it does for you. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I would love to learn more about that from you. Do you have any techniques or strategies when someone's looking in the mirror? So now we don't have the scale, right? So now the scale is not an option, but yet we still go to the mirror. And I think this is part of our conditioning. It's like our first thought goes to like our belly or our arms or the place that we don't like. And it's like immediately it's just can ruin your day and just be that negative Nancy that's like, I just wrote a post about this. I didn't post it yet, but I'm about to, but it's like the volume gets turned up and it's like loud and you can't ignore it. So what strategies or tips do you have for someone who does do that? They go to the mirror, they're feeling good in their head, but then they look at themselves and all of a sudden it's like all of those thoughts just turn negative.
Yeah, great question. So there's a couple of things you can do. And one of the things with regards to looking at your reflection in the mirror, I, for a very long time, had put on Post-it notes, positive affirmations about what my body does for me. So that I, instead of looking at my image in the mirror, which we know, like neurologically can be distorted. There's like, it literally can, like, I know that my body image, there's body dysmorphia. So how I look and yet how the society looks at me can be totally two different lenses. Yeah. So we know when someone is struggling with an eating disorder that they do suffer from body distortion. Yeah. So, and that's what I would say to myself, like what I'm seeing in the mirror is a distorted view of myself. And then I had all my positive body affirmations on the Post-it notes right there in the mirror. Mm-hmm. So I am strong. My legs help me to run. You use your arms. I was a tennis player. You use your arms to play competitive tennis. Your stomach helps you to laugh. It gives you that, instinct of, the instinct of when you can't trust something. Mm-hmm. So it's about moving away from, again, how your body looks to how your body performs or its ability or what its actual function is. Mm-hmm. And that's to keep you alive. Right. I mean, truly, I think back to all the damage I did to my body and I'm like, holy cow, it's super amazing how much it's kept me alive, given all the deprivation and or binging or the horrible things I've said to it, back when I was younger. And so, moving through away from the distortion of what you see in the mirror and moving back into, living your life. And again, not being a prisoner, because I look back and even though I was thinner years ago, I don't look back and wish for that body back. I wish for that time back because I wasn't living. And so, that's the main thing is when we are struggling with an eating disorder, we isolate ourselves. We're not getting into the rooms. We're not working on our friendships. We are staying small and staying restrictive in so many areas of our life, not just in our relationship with our food.
Right. Yes. It represents so much more. I think that's such a really, really great point. And I'm glad that you also brought up body dysmorphia. I guess because I'm going to be really honest, really vulnerable, and people listen to my story and my podcast. And so I recently went through this illness. Was basically restricted to, I couldn't exercise anymore. And I got to the point where I was like super fit, working out 5 to 6 times a week, like nutrition is a part of me, it's part of my brand, everything. And I've had to only walk, and I'm still like, I'm basically cleared today to go back. But let me tell you, has my body changed like for months, like when you're used to being like killing it in the gym, whatever. And so in the beginning, it was very hard for me mentally. And I go to therapy, and my therapist was like, basically explaining to me that we have to kind of talk to your brain and say like, okay, who is this? Like, who's talking, right? And so I would find myself beating myself up in my head. And the only thing that kind of saved me from that was saying like, okay, this is my disordered mind, or this is not, my mind. This is like, the other mind or whatever. But in the beginning, before the therapy, and even when she was there, like kind of similar to your situation, although the therapist is telling you this, you're like, okay, whatever, like, no, like you're kind of resistant. I remember thinking like, I can't even trust my mind. Like, I don't know what I look like. Like, I don't know if what I'm seeing is real or not. And so I guess my question is, my long way of asking that question is like, how does someone even identify that they might have body dysmorphia?
Well, that's a great question. Typically, a couple of things we look for is that it causes distress in certain areas of your life. So the distress is in your relationship with others. Your distress is in your relationship with yourself. And it also, the distress shows up in your academic or career. So for instance, like if I'm struggling with body dysmorphia, I may not leave my home because I'm too ashamed of the way that I think I look, and therefore I'm missing work.
Right.
Or therefore I'm missing class. Body dysmorphia, I'm too ashamed of the way that I look. Therefore, I'm not allowing myself to get in any romantic relationships. Yeah. I stop going to social events with my friends. I'm not going to go to that holiday party. So body dysmorphia means that in addition to not liking or thinking I'm ashamed about the way I look, I have panic attacks. I'm more insecure and restless. I'm hopeless and helpless. I'm suffering from fatigue. I'm not sleeping well at night. So those are the things we start to look for. So typically a person might come in for like a panic attack, like I'm having panic attacks and I need to stop these panic attacks. And then I'm like, okay, well, what's been going on? And then slowly but surely we uncover that there's been body dysmorphia. We have to look at the panic attack as a symptom of the body dysmorphia. So it's just like pneumonia is the disease and the symptom is the fever. Well, you've been taking Tylenol, but you're not treating the pneumonia, which means a lot higher level of care. And that's the same thing. Like we can treat the panic, but really what we need to really, zoom in on is the body image, the ruptured body image. And that's, the body dysmorphia.
Right. Thank you. That was very clear. And I probably, I'm assuming there's stages where sometimes, although you have the thoughts, they're not maybe strong enough to take you out of those social situations, but you still think about them. Like you still think about like, oh, I don't want to go. Like, even though you like work your way up to go, you're still thinking, I don't want to go because I don't look a certain way. And I think that alone is very telling. So if anybody is experiencing that, probably I would suggest to get help before it gets to that point where you're actually avoiding those social situations and not going out on dates, or it's starting to affect your relationship. I think that's really important. So this is always happens to me. I have like a thought and then like we talk and I forget my thought. All right. So we talked.
Can I add one thing?
Sure. Yeah.
So I love that you said, when I say this, I don't mean like, I love that you were not able to exercise, but you mentioned like, I wasn't able to exercise due to my illness. And here's the really beautiful thing about that for you as a provider. You're going to have a whole another level of empathy for the people that are not able to exercise.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to make you that much more of a capable provider than you already are. Right. And that's like universe, God working its way to help you serve and to help you be able to say, yes, I understand and validate because you really get it.
Yeah. 150%. And that helped me in my healing.
Yeah.
So, because there would be times where I would get super frustrated and so annoyed and I'd have to bring it back and I'd have to remind myself like, no, there's a season for everything. God has a bigger purpose for me. and I'm supposed to use this time to connect with other people. It's my first year doing my business full time, like to develop my business, to really be ready for when I have those new clients or for whatever God has in store for me next, to really understand that self-care, because that's the one thing that I've taken away from this year is like so much self-care. Yeah. Like I've never slept so much in my life. But it was necessary because, you know, I think we all have our thing, and my thing was just like constantly doing this and doing that and scattered. And this has really forced me to slow down. So it's been a beautiful lesson. And I think also too, every time we think we have healed or recovered, and this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So this is perfect. I think it's always still going to be like kind of part of us, right? So it never goes away. And I'm curious about your experience with maybe body dysmorphia or like having those kind of negative thoughts with food. My question, I guess, is like, do they still come up? How often do they come up? And when they come up, how do you respond to them?
Well, I just actually did an IGTV not too long ago. I think it was like 2 weeks ago about this because, I was getting ready to go out and I put on this like jumpsuit. And I'm like, hey, I asked my husband, like, can you zip it up? And he's like, sure. And like, I think the last time I wore the jumpsuit might have been like 6 months ago. And like he was like, oh, like trying to get the zipper up, and I'm like, come on, like pull it. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm trying. And he got it, but I mean, I was like in it, like packed it. And I was like, I don't know if I can breathe. You know, like I don't know if I'll be able to sit. I'll be like Kim Kardashian at the Met Ball. Like I can't function. I won't be able to pee. And he was like, oh, you look great. You know, don't worry. And then I just looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, oh my gosh, like the first thought, I've put on weight. And again, like I don't have a scale. I don't know when I gain weight. I literally just got a full length mirror maybe 3 months ago in my house. Like I haven't had a full length mirror in my house in years. Mm-hmm. So, and I felt that insecurity. I felt that worry. I felt that fear. I felt, you know, not nearly as bad as I was when I was, you know, much younger, but I was like, oh, there it is. There's that, all that anxiety coming up about gaining weight. And so I took off the jumpsuit and I actually went into my, like bathroom. And and that's something that I used to do when I was, triggered when I was in college, is that I would just go into like where my bathroom was and I would close the door and just breathe. And just really try to get myself regulated, because I knew, I mean, obviously being a psychologist, I'm like, okay, I'm in my sympathetic nervous system. I went into fight, flight, or freeze response. I'm not feeling safe and social. So I need to regulate myself doing some deep breathing. So I just breathed. And then once I felt more regulated, meaning I went back into my parasympathetic nervous system and I'm up the ladder now, I'm safe and social. I opened the door and I was like, okay, let's go into the closet and let's just find something else. I wasn't going to allow my night to get ruined because one piece of clothing, which is just fabric, was not going to take the power away from me. Mm-hmm. I was not going to give my power over to some piece of fabric. Right. So I just went in, got a different shirt, got a different pair of pants, put on some fun jewelry. I reminded myself all that I did that day. Fitness instructor. So I taught a spin class that morning. Like I taught a killer spin class that morning. I ran around running errands with my kids. I attended their soccer games. I came home and cleaned. I was able to sit on the couch and read for a little bit. Like my body's been able to digest. I just got over having pneumonia. You know, I mean, that's big in and of itself. It's been healing itself. Like I went through it. Like, what has my body been doing for me? You know, use those prompts. How can I appreciate my body? Shifting the focus off of what it looked like in that garment versus what it looks like now and what I can appreciate about it. And then I said to my husband, let's go. Like, because if I don't get out of the house, I'm going to want to stay home. And we went out and we had a great time. And I'm so glad I did. But what I shared on my IGTV is that, you know, years ago, that would have never happened. Like I would be a full-fledged meltdown. I would have been crying. I probably would have thrown the garment into, the trash can, you know, I would have binged or I would have deprived myself the next day, automatically go on a diet, you know, be in the gym for 3 hours. And I really would have shamed myself. Mm-hmm. And my purpose of sharing that on IGTV was to let people know, like, hey, there's hope. You know, are we going to wake up one day as women and say, and like yell from the rooftops that we love our bodies? Probably not. You know, there's always going to be something there that may not make us feel like we're completely, you know, unaffected. But does my body have to be a source of stress for me? No, it does not. It does not have to hold me back from living my life. And so I can remain neutral, meaning that there's going to be days that like, damn, I look good. And then there's going to be days where I'm like, oh, not feeling my best, but that's okay. I'm going to go do it anyways. Mm-hmm. Right. And so that's, I think, much more realistic approach to body image than thinking like you have to always love the way that you look, because I don't think I'm always going to love the way that I look. In fact, the other night I didn't, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think that's what kind of screws us up. And I'm going to just be straight up and honest. Like for me, it was like, because I felt like I needed to be perfect, which probably stems from childhood or whatever, you know, it's just like, I needed to be a certain way. And so therefore anything less than was just like not acceptable. And then that's where we create these standards that are not realistic. And it just can pull us right back into that kind of like, it's a darker, deeper place. So the highs are be super high, but then the lows are super low.
Yes.
So you said that neutrality is what we should be striving for, because not for nothing, like our bodies are a part of us, but they're not all of us. And we give us way too much credit to like, this is my body, so therefore like I am worthy. And like, that is just a whole other, we can go on for hours about that. But I think that's a big concept that I wonder, I feel like most women go through that. I would say, like, I know it was huge for me, especially like when I was dating and trying to find someone. And I was just like, you know, I just always attracted the worst men, and I like felt like it was because of my body and stuff like that. And I feel like it's a big part of growth that I hope that anybody who's listening to this can kind of heal from going forward.
Yeah, I hope so too, because it is. It's a part of all of us, because we are women. And really, the message is very clear for women from the get-go, is that our purpose is to please, either to look pleasing to a person's eye or to please others and to serve others. And we forget to take care of ourselves. We forget to really allow ourselves to be like, you know, what do I want? And many times in childhood, you know, women or children are told like, you know, the message is to be seen, not heard. And so I think it's really like, again, like a rebellious act for women to move away from thinking that they have to look a certain way in order to be accepted. And I mean, the whole thing too, with dieting and all this stuff, I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that's meant for us to, you know, fail at. We're meant to be unsuccessful and to feel bad about ourselves so that we don't get out there and we don't create, or we don't think that we are enough. And it's oppression of women. And it's, there's a long history to it. And I think that's a whole other piece. This isn't just something like you woke up with one day, like you're programmed to feel this way about yourself. And so to really detach and to move away from trying to diet and be obsessed or compulsive about it really means that you're doing something really radical, not only for yourself, but for society as well.
Yeah. I completely agree. I'm actually in the process of writing a book right now, and yeah, thank you. It's a lot. I like gave myself a deadline. I'm like, I'm never writing. I don't know when this is ever going to come out. But one thing that I've been doing a lot of research about is just media and a lot of like the Disney movies and what we grew up seeing. And we don't think this way just because exactly what you just said. It's like, we have been thrown these images since we could hear and read and see. And it's not, I guess, what's the word? It's very normal to feel this way. It's not our fault. And I think like some people feel like, I think also as women, we feel like we have to have it all together and we're not supposed to feel any sort of, you know, anything less than perfect or happy, or it's like, we're not allowed to be human, I find. And it's very normal to not like your body some days and to have these thoughts. But I think the lesson is we don't have to react to them, right? We don't have to then go and restrict or then binge or then like do something about it. And kind of circling back to the very beginning where you said it's very natural for us to want to avoid pain. So I guess if you could maybe, I'm going to just check the time, see how we're doing. Yeah, just to kind of end here and wrap up a little bit. But we tend to avoid pain. And you mentioned that you do that through, in the past, you use like your food as that way to do it. What are some other ways or things for people to recognize that they might be avoiding that one thing that they really need to address head on?
Yeah, it's a great question. So typically when a person is in a restrictive mode and or a binging episode, that means that they're avoiding their emotional experience. So if we're not eating, we're not feeling, because automatically when we are born, our first experience with being brought into the world is to be held and fed. Right? Either through breast milk or through formula, we're nurtured, we're loved, we're comforted at the same time as we are getting fed. So right away, there's an emotional attachment to food, and food is emotional, right? So if there's a birthday, we celebrate by eating cake. If there's death, we bring over food. If there's a holiday, we gather around the table and eat. So food is emotional. It's meant to have emotional connection for emotional intimacy. So if a person is restricting, then that means they're not feeling. They're wanting to avoid their emotions. You'll see comorbidity also with sexual health. So if a person isn't eating and restricting, they're less likely to allow themselves to be experiencing sexual pleasure. So it's a positive correlation. Now, on the other end of the spectrum with binge episodes, a person is binging, meaning like you're picking something up and you're eating it. So it's very mindless. Yeah. So again, it's another way of numbing out, because if I'm really paying attention to my physical cues and my internal experience, then I would stop eating, but I'm not doing that. I'm numbing out and I'm in autopilot and I'm soothing myself through eating. And if a person didn't experience love growing up, and there's a really huge wound there from a traumatic perspective, eating is love because it fills me up in a way that I didn't get from my parents. And so binging is another way for us to avoid our emotional experience. So like I said, like for me, I was both ends. So I was really avoiding my pain because that pain was a very emotional experience of grief and loss. And so I did those eating disordered behaviors in order to not feel. So a lot of my therapy work had to focus on feeling again and giving myself the permission to regulate my emotions so that I wasn't going from 0 to 100. I would go from maybe like 10 up to 70, back down to 30, back up to 40, whatever it may be, but I'm more regulated.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very helpful. So I know that you have a course out, correct? If you want to just kind of talk about what that is, where people can find it, I would love to learn more about it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yes, I have an online body image course called Bye Bye Body Blame. You deserve to love your body without having to lose weight. And the course is really for anybody. You can be in therapy and you can use it as a supplementation to your therapy. You could not be in therapy and really start to work on understanding more about your relationship with your body. And I cover a lot of research. So I go through the Minnesota Starvation Experiment, which is the largest study on restriction that took place after World War II with Dr. Ansel Keys. I go through the etiology of trauma, of diet culture. I define diet culture so people know what that is. I define what a negative body image is versus a positive body image. And there's lots of journal prompts. There's a workbook that it comes with so you can follow along. It's an audio and or video. And once you buy it, it's yours forever. There's no like start and stop date. So it gives people an opportunity to work through. And I really put it together because I went back to the girl that was, really struggling and thought to myself, what would have helped her? And not everybody can afford therapy. come to therapy on a regular basis, or maybe they're having multiple providers and they're just kind of burned out, or maybe they have a daughter that's struggling and they don't know where to start. So the course has 4 core steps that you can follow to transform your body image from a negative more towards a positive, or at least a neutral stance. So I love it. And I've gotten great feedback about it. And it's located on my Instagram through my link in my profile, or on my website, which is www.scottsdalepremiercounseling.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And I am curious, are you allowed, do you do online nutrition, not nutrition, I'm just used to talking to nutrition. Do you do online therapy, or is it only in person in Scottsdale?
It's only in person in Scottsdale. So I'm licensed in the state of Arizona, but I will have launching in 2020 more online courses. So right now on my Instagram, I've been diving really into boundaries, because that was one of the things that so many people are like, I struggle with boundaries. And boundaries obviously show up around a relationship with food too, as you know, with your work. So there'll be a boundaries course coming out. There'll be a self-limiting beliefs course coming out. So there's more things coming. I just, right now, as you know, like, holiday season is like the prime season for mental health. And so I've been really just focusing on my clients, because I adore them. And then, of course, my family life with my kids. But in 2020, I look forward to having some more accessibility. But if they sign up for my email newsletter, I put tons of information on my email newsletter. So that's also another, tool that they can use.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thank you. I will put all of that in the show notes. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up?
No, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. You're just such a gift, and I love your smile. And yeah, I just really appreciate being here.
Oh, my pleasure. And I would love to have you back again, because I have a feeling a lot of people are going to like this, and we could kind of go deeper. Into maybe one of those topics. I think that would be really great.
Yeah. Let me know what your, listeners would like more, information on, and we should definitely line that up. So yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Wow. That was incredible. I really am so grateful to be able to interview experts in their field. And I basically get like a refresher of the things that I know, or I learn something new. So I'm definitely going to grab the course, because like I said, although I am in therapy and I work on this stuff regularly, it doesn't hurt to have the additional resources and guidance and support. And I could always learn more for myself, and also to help my clients and to help you all. So I'm definitely going to grab the course. Go to the show notes to get information about Dr. Morgan Francis, and also the link to her website so you can get the course yourself. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe. It allows other people to find the podcast, but more importantly, it notifies you when a new episode comes out every Monday and every Wednesday. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Toni Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.